Before we get going though, and before I introduce her, I just wanted to kind of call out what might be obvious at this point, that we have some new Zoom protocols. So last week, we were actually had a pretty bad Zoom bombing situation happen with one of our public meetings. And we're in the process of transitioning to the Zoom webinar feature, but this meeting was already set up with the old URL and the standard meeting. So we stuck with that for today and have just pretty much locked down the account. So Ada and Patrick are in the background and have muted everyone and turned off cameras. Chat is not available. So that's why we're switching to webinar in the future, because webinar has that, but then also allows you to have like more interactive chat and Q&A. So anyway, bear with us today. We're sorry it's so locked down, but again, had a pretty bad public meeting Zoom bomb that we're trying to navigate through. Patrick, that said, or Ada, is there a way for people to ask questions? Would it be like through Slack or just through email?
We can turn it on
Go ahead.
where participants can just chat us. And so if there are questions, Patrick and I can help field those to you guys.
Okay. Let's do that if we can, just because I don't know. I could imagine someone having something that they want to ask Mary. So if that's possible, then let's try that. Okay. Well, you guys know that as we've kind of transitioned to this monthly town hall format, we're trying to bring in just engaging, unique speakers to really just kind of get all of us thinking a little bit about our work and about the sector. And today we are so excited to have Mary Kim from Bridge Innovate with us. I've known Mary, gosh, now for several years, and have just been so thrilled that she's a part of the Chattanooga community now. It's funny, I hadn't thought about this till now, Mary, but I met her when she first moved here from working with SCAD, and she has one of the most unique backgrounds of anybody really in this town. She was with Savannah College of Art and Design, if you guys remember that, before being here, where she was in charge of basically building out their what they called their SCAD Pro program, which was experiential learning opportunities for students to work with Fortune 500 companies. That transitioned pretty nicely into what she's doing now with Bridge Innovate. She's a senior consultant with Bridge, which is a local design thinking consultancy. And she works mostly with corporations as well as nonprofits. She's working on a fun project with us right now. And really kind of tries to help organizations tackle those like big, hairy, complex problems. She's very focused on human-centered design and putting people at the center of solutions. And additionally, something that I think y'all might be interested in, she helps lead their Bright Spark program, which Bright Spark is really it's a kind of a design thinking project that they run in schools. So it's all about helping get young kids, all different ages in the school system, thinking creatively about solving problems for their community. So she's a huge asset. I personally and our whole team has really loved getting to know her and working with her on some other projects, and are just really excited to have her here today to share with us her thoughts on innovation. So with that, Mary, is your camera turned on? Yes, I see you. What did I miss? Is there anything else about your background that you'd love to share with us? Oh, muted. Can we unmute Mary?
Thank you. I was trying to stay muted while you were speaking, and then I couldn't unmute myself. So thank you so much for the introduction, Abby. And just generally, thank you to the Venture Forward team, Abby, Patrick, and Ada, for inviting me to be part of this virtual town hall. I'm really excited to be here and share a bit about myself and the insights I've gained in the innovation sector. Abby, I think you've done a beautiful job covering the I would say more the recent professional background, and I like to just kind of open up myself to you and share a little bit of my personal background as well as my professional background. I think that provides a bit of a hopefully some foundation as to where I am today. So, and just my thoughts on innovation as we unpack that category. So, I'm a first generation Korean American. And the reason why I share that is some people, I think, often have this block that certain people or certain companies are the only ones who can be innovative. And I would say I grew up in a very, culturally homogenous country. I would say Korea is among the most ethnically homogenous nations in the world, and where following the set rules, and at least when I grew up, following the trends were enforced and rewarded. So, just following the line, the path was what was rewarded, which where I think I'm still, in terms of some of the ways I think, lean actually towards conservative or pragmatic area, not always creative and innovative. What actually I was able to draw on the creativity is actually focusing on art. So before really focusing on innovation, if you follow my path on LinkedIn, you will say, she is an art major, which I am. And I would say, it's interesting because what I found that being an artist, you're often, and I think, for good reason, often we are perceived to be creative, but not innovative. So it's interesting, as Abby shared now, I work with Bridge Innovate where and previously at SCA, where a lot of my work focused on providing innovative solutions to Fortune 500 companies, nonprofits, organizations to create new opportunities for growth, drive innovation through these tools like human-centered tools and process in place. So I would say that's just a little tidbit about myself, and yeah.
Okay, sorry, I have to be given permission to unmute. Navigating the new normal.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, Mary. I never thought about that, about your background and where you grew up. I feel like I also categorize myself as one of those folks who's always been rewarded for being in the lines and kind of following the expected trajectory. And so it's interesting when you are forced to kind of step out of that. Well, so along the lines of innovation, how do you define innovation? I mean, that's one of those things that lots of people have lots of different definitions. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I'd like to just start off by saying the reason why I share my background is partly to share that your background doesn't dictate how innovative you can be. And the interesting thing is when you type in innovation in the search engine box, first thing that will pop up is obviously the dictionary definition, which says new idea, method, device, the introduction of something new. So I think for me, especially nowadays, it's very difficult to be completely original. There's so many great ideas already out there. So I personally find it challenging to come up with brand new ideas that no one else has thought of. So if you ask me, how I would define innovation, I would say what makes a person, a company or product or culture innovative today is, I would say, if I were to borrow my creative energy here, is having that creativity with a focus that lead to action, and the ability to have bring distinctiveness to the market or to your customer that drives value specifically. So I don't always focus on the newness of an idea, but does that idea or product or service, is that unique? Is that distinctive in a way that drives value? So it doesn't always have to be completely a new idea to be innovative.
Yeah, I love that concept. I love that I hear people getting stuck on that a lot too. And I think people also confuse innovation with invention. And it's like, it's so much more nuanced than just, inventing a light bulb from scratch. So that's interesting. So, okay, what do you feel like are some of the kind of key elements of innovating? Like, what are some of the main tools that you use to get to those innovative, new, nuanced ideas that you talk about?
Yeah, that's a great question, Abby. I think there are so many elements that can support, like drive, accelerate innovation. I think there are so many things out there that can support that. I would say two or three things if you were to ask me, like what have been kind of the tools or the process I've used lately to drive innovation has been strategic foresight and user experience. I would say with the foundation of kind of the collaborative effort to make that happen. So to, for those of us that may not be familiar with the terms, and I apologize for the consultative, like the jargon that I may be using here, but strategic foresight, often called futures thinking as well. If you do, Google search, some researching there, it's a planning oriented discipline. It's a set of practices, capabilities for anticipating and preparing for the future. And it's not a crystal ball, to be honest. If we had a crystal ball and we could just pop out a preferred future state, wouldn't that be awesome? But this practice allows us, or organizations, individuals, to create functional and operational views of alternative, or I would say preferred futures and possibilities / opportunities. So this process that we use called strategic foresight, we are better prepared for potential risks and disruptions that especially we saw during the COVID era, that we're still currently facing the threats, and are able to capitalize on some of those hidden opportunities that we may not have seen coming down the horizon. So that's a little bit about strategic foresight. The other component I mentioned about user experience, and we have actually an ongoing project that we're just getting actually ready to launch with Venture Forward in relations to this. User experience is, as the name suggests, or you may kind of guess what that is. It's a process to design a system in a way that offers a great experience to its users. It's I would say it's holistic in the sense that it encompasses all aspects of the user's interaction with a product or service or a company or organization. So the focus is on having a deep understanding, as Abby, you mentioned, like on the human component, the user, what they need, what are their challenges, what sometimes we call pain points, what are their values, their limitations, and utilizing the insights that we gather in that process to promote improving the quality of their interaction. So we're able to improve our service, product, process, organization by having a better understanding what our users are going through. So essentially putting on their shoes and walking on their path and seeing, what are the gaps of opportunities or services that, can be improved to drive innovation that way.
Do you have specific examples that you could give us of, like, just to make it a little bit more concrete of how you've used that, or yeah, just more concrete examples of either of those tools?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with strategic foresight, and then jump onto user experience too, so that I can, mentally frame that for myself as well. So for strategic foresight, to start off with just like an analogy, it's many organizations, I think, have a challenge because they have a ton of internal historic data they can look at to plan ahead. But we often think that as driving only with using your back mirror, because you're looking at historical data from last month, last year, which is extremely helpful. But when you only use that data, you're not necessarily looking at what's coming down the pipeline. So I would say the biggest why when it comes to actually both strategic foresight and user experiences are the increasing change in market shift that we're seeing, the consumer or customer, people's behavior that you might have seen, especially during COVID. I think we saw people go from I only shop in store to almost 100%, going for e-com. They say that, actually virtual online ordering of groceries actually exceeded in-person shopping at some point during the COVID, which kind of blows my mind. So it is imperative, I think, to stay agile, distinctive, and competitive. To do so, you need to scan forward, scan the horizon, navigate what's coming down the pipeline. And what we've seen companies do, actually, a great example is I can recommend people go check out is Shell. So Shell, you may just think of it as the gas station, but it's it's Royal Dutch Shell. They've been around for a long time, and believe it or not, you may not recognize this, but they've been actually doing futures thinking for the past 50 years. So it's not something that's just, all of a sudden strategic foresight is not a new thing. Some companies have been have developed this as an organizational competency capability for many decades. And what Shell actually does is publish what they call our Shell scenarios. And initially they developed it as a way, just like many of us would do, right? We have executives that are interested in what's coming down the pipeline, but may not always have the time, right? We're all time and resources, we just don't have enough of it. So it was used as a way to open up executive thinking for, so to inform them, here's what's coming down. But now they actually publish these Shell scenarios publicly as well, as a way to inform the overall market, the public, to stretch everyone's thinking and help companies internally and externally make tough decisions in times of uncertainty. Because I think one of the key things here is there are many unknown unknowns. So often one of the things I would say is, especially if you're thinking about, is strategic foresight or future thinking for me, I would say, what are you doing currently? What is your current state? Are your decision making based on a lot of assumptions or gut feeling? Or is it that you are actually searching for not only gathering internal data, but are you scanning things that are out there to inform this decision as you plan ahead? And I would say for some of our clients, we are seeing more of this move to actually, different than Shell, but utilizing a core group within their organization, building them up to be kind of champions to gather this insights, because sometimes it can be hard to require everyone to do scanning. And one of the things that we have seen companies do to really stretch their minds is many, if you are familiar with some of the business practices, there's pest analysis or pestle analysis. The acronym stands for political, economical, social, legal, and environmental, technological. It wasn't in order, but it's in a way to stretch our mindset. We often look for reports that we're used to looking at. We tend to go down this tunnel vision. It's like, this is the only information that's relevant to my industry. But when a disruption like COVID comes your way, you realize a lot of different factors, external forces are in place, not, initially weren't directly impacting your organization or business, but now it truly is. So that's why we're not saying that, again, I emphasize the point that it's not a crystal ball, but having this practice of gathering and mining data to build insights that inform your decision can help you get to that preferred state in the future, I think with a more clear path, by kind of eliminating those unknown unknowns. And that's what we've seen our clients do. With user experience, and which is one of my, I would say, a favorite process, because it really truly puts customer and human at the center. What we have seen a lot of our organizations, clients do is one, have build a persona, or what we call an empathy map, of just having our voice of a customer. I think a lot of our organizations are practicing that nowadays, is really asking intentional questions to gather where their current state is, where do they want to be, what are some barriers that are stopping them from reaching their desired outcome, and understanding that your product or your service, your organization could be either the pain reliever or gain creator for that customer. And the gaps are able to be identified through some of the tools like a customer journey map. A customer journey map is, I would say, to put it simply, it's a visual story of your customer's interaction with your product, service, or even the whole company. And this exercise helps businesses, or organizations step into your constituency, your stakeholder, or your customer shoes, and see from their perspective and engage from, with their perspective in mind. And that's where we see sometimes companies have assumptions as to what their interaction is providing, or their touch points are providing the customers. But often we see that there are always gaps where there are the customers are feeling overwhelmed or frustrated or stagnant with their interaction with the service or product. And that is an opportunity to innovate, to provide something distinctive and competitive. And it doesn't, again, have to be, I would say, it's not always an iPhone, right? It doesn't have to be something that's big and shiny, a bold move. It's often something that are business as usual, or often it is, what my CEO Jenny and I would say, like, just do it. It's like some little things that you can go and make a quick change that actually have a significant impact on the customer journey, and therefore their experience with you and your organization.
Yeah, I definitely just took some notes on all that, Mary. You inspired me. I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to have an internal foresight team that does nothing but like come together and predict these like bold, outrageous futures, and see where we might just be totally missing something that we are assuming would never happen. I just think COVID has made us, I don't know, I'm probably speaking for everyone now, but for me personally, COVID has just made me realize that those things that seemed like sci-fi fantasies, like never could happen, like actually just happened. So like what other things that might seem outrageous could be coming anyway. Well, so shifting gears a little bit, do you have just like, you shared with us about Shell, but do you have other examples of just like a favorite new innovation that you're keeping your eye on, or just something like an example of an innovative company or product that you just think is really something of interest that we should check out? Or that's
Great
coming
question.
in the future?
Yeah. So a couple of things come to my mind, especially since COVID hit. Actually, there is a quote by Microsoft CEO, how he says, from his perspective, the digital transformation that would have taken 2 years happened in 2 months because of COVID. So everything, I think, related to technology, digital aspect, we knew that it was already exponentially impacting and transforming just the market landscape, but it has done so more significantly this past year. So that's something I think just to be mindful of, especially when you're collecting data. In terms of new innovations, I think just generally what I've been just scanning and keeping my eye on is the transformation in logistics, partly because you might have noticed with the rise of e-commerce, just all the online purchases that we all have made recently, there is one sector I would say if actually had a positive market build was the logistics, because the increase, even though they had their fair of challenges, I think they've had to do pretty significant pivoting or some innovation of, to allow for the high volume increase that they saw during COVID. So I think they're realizing all the nuances or just the huge shift that they saw with COVID. And a lot of those data collecting agencies are predicting that the rise of e-com is here to stay. And I think we saw that coming down the pipeline, but I'm just curious to see how the transformation of logistics industry will continue to happen to support the growing demand. And that's part of the reason, actually, you mentioned Bright Spark, Abby. We are actually gathering some really bright minds over the summer of high schoolers. And asking them, we saw with the rise of e-com and logistics industry, we also saw kind of the downside of that, which was the ton of boxes and all the materials, and just if you think about fuel, human resources in order to make that happen. So we are actually going to try to take on what does it mean to be sustainable when you have such high demand in e-com? So I'm actually excited to see what those high schoolers this summer will come up with. So that's something that we'll be doing as a virtual in-person high school experience this summer that I'm really looking forward to.
Oh man, you can use my house as an example site. I have a garage full of boxes from Amazon. So please have them figure out what to do with those.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so you've had exposure to a lot of different companies and a lot of different leaders over the years. And given that, many of the folks on our call today are nonprofit leaders here in town, I would just be curious to know your thoughts on, have you identified some kind of common characteristics amongst good leaders who really kind of cultivate a mindset and a culture of innovation in their organization? Because we're trying to make that shift in the nonprofit sector, but I think so much of it comes from leadership and culture. And I'd be curious to know if you have some examples on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. And the difference, I would say, some of the differences I see from working with a corporation that may have invested the time and resources to build out their innovation capability, that's not always it's often considered a luxury for nonprofits because you have a lot of stakeholders to answer to, a lot of big initiatives in place that you're responsible for delivering. So in terms of characteristics of a leader to drive innovation, I would say something that comes to my mind is just, and it may be just a common knowledge here, but a clear vision of desired future state. I think it's important to drive, inspire the stakeholders and those that work in the nonprofit sector generally. And the reason why I say that, and this is, I would say, certainly apply to corporations as well. But when especially leaders in nonprofit, it's easy to get consumed with the tactical things that must be done for the day-to-day operations of an organization. And that's where, I know it's challenging, but I do, encourage you to think what it's like to have a strategic point of view, thinking maybe 5-10 years ahead. And that's where the strategic foresight comes in. If you are able to, I think, draw that clear vision of future state or preferred future state, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's easier to kind of step back from that and have a clear strategic plan, because we do often work with a lot of nonprofits on their strategic planning, but often it's when we ask like what are the challenges, it's usually very immediate challenges that they're facing. So often we miss the opportunity to think of something creative or innovative because we are more consumed in the tactical area. So I would say that's one component, the clear vision of desired future state. And of course, I think the ability to drive the culture of diversity and open collaboration, just as important. I think it's, I mentioned how I came from a very ethnically homogenous background, but also one of the things that really opened my eyes is that from there, when I came to the States, I went to, many of us may have experienced this, but high school where it was, 30% African American, 30% Hispanic, 30% Caucasian, and then I was probably, the 1%. And being an outsider, actually being able to observe was really helpful, and understanding the diversity and the power of diversity when it came to that. And that also actually helped with my experience at Savannah College of Art and Design. My background being a creative, but I was very focused on my particular, I would say, major at that time. I have a master's actually in luxury and fashion management. And when I was actually put into a SCAD Pro program, and when Microsoft said, hey, we want to tackle this big, hairy challenge, who should be part of this team? Initially, I was like, I just want to work with people I generally work with, and didn't really realize that there are limitations to just working with people that think very similarly as you. And when we brought in the animators, the service designers, the fashion design majors, the illustrators, I realized the power of collaboration just exponentially drove impact to the outcome of the project. And I know many of us talk about the importance of diversity and open collaboration, but I certainly feel that. And I think especially when working with students as well, it's just something I see day to day, the importance of that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Mary. It's amazing what, just how much better outcomes and impact you have when it's a diverse set of viewpoints that have put together the project, right? And also in some ways, I find it's almost easier when you have all these divergent points of view in the room, because you're not constantly worrying, like, are we missing something, right? Like, much less likely to miss something when you have a variety of viewpoints in the room. Well, oh gosh, it's 9:35. I'm not doing my job keeping us on track. You have so much amazing things to share. Thank you. I guess to close this out, one of my favorite things is when I have smart people in front of us is just to share, like, what resources do you go to keep yourself inspired? Like, what are your, favorite books you're reading, or websites you like to go to, or articles? Do you have anything to share on that front? And then I think we do have a couple questions from the audience.
Yeah. I don't, so this was a tough one just to think through initially. I would say more so lately, what I've been slightly obsessed with is searching out virtual collaboration platforms in general. And I love learning about them because I think the future of work is forever transformed. I think even for me, I realized I never thought that I could work virtually from home and be productive. And I realized I'm extremely productive when I'm working from home. So I've been really interested in just learning about different platforms. I actually learned a new one from a client yesterday that I'm really excited to dig into. And I think that's something for us, especially understanding that the market has changed, the future of work, the office space, it is already changing and will continue to change. The purpose of an office space, the purpose of a virtual collaboration platform. So I would encourage, if you haven't really looked into that, it will open up your mind as to what you can potentially do, especially if you're looking for a diverse team. You don't all have to be in one place. you can be in different parts of the world, and work collaboratively. So I would say, uh, been obviously using Mural. I think Klaxoon is the one I just learned about yesterday. Obviously, many of us know that we use Sprint-based religiously as well, but I love learning about them and utilizing those tools to open my eyes.
Yeah. What was the third one you just learned about?
It's called Klaxoon.
Klaxoon. Okay, I'll look
Yes.
that up. Interesting. Okay, well, I think Patrick has a couple of questions from the audience. I can't see
Yeah,
them,
sure.
Patrick, so you go for it.
This one comes from Madison Bradford, and she asks, any tips for trying to vision cast with our coworkers that may be more task oriented?
Interesting. So uh, there are, I think, things that you can do. That's sometimes we call it a listening session, but it's just more of, I would say, asking questions with, or having a conversation, really open a conversation, uh, to see how people are oriented differently. And I mentioned earlier that I tend to be generally on the conservative side, especially what we do when we talk about change style indicators, is what we call it's a just an assessment tool. And I tend to be more on the conservator, pragmatic uh, sector, whereas my boss, Jenny Weiner, she is the originator way to the other side. And surprisingly, we work well together. And I would say it is, I don't want to say you shouldn't be tactical. You should be. Day-to-day business require tactical people to complete and execute, because execution is key. But I do think that, having drafting a clear, again, that future state together as a team could be a helpful exercise. Like 3 to 5 years from now, what do you want your organization to be? How do your kind of value path in a way? What does that look like 3 to 5 years from now? And walk backwards, right? And then you're able to create those key milestones, and then that keeps the tactical people happy because there are actual actions and steps to be taken to get to that desired state, if that makes sense.
Mary, I remember one of the exercises that y'all took us through when I was at my old organization was the newspaper headline
Mm-hmm.
exercise, where each person gets a big piece of paper and you literally like write and draw what you want that newspaper headline to be in 3 or 5 years about your organization.
Yes.
And it was so fun because it's like you get to kind of be artsy and draw and make it look like a newspaper. But it was also really interesting when we had each of our team members do that. Like, as the leader of the organization, it was really helpful for me to be able to understand how my teammates were envisioning that future versus just how I was envisioning it. And then we kind of came together and put it all together. But I love that exercise.
Yes, that's exactly the intention, is that everyone has a different perspective and they're all valid and valuable. So we often start off with having individual fill out and then put together, we'll do dot voting. There's virtual dot voting available on many platforms, and you're able to craft a common vision together. So Abby, great to hear that you enjoyed that exercise as well.
I liked that one. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
We have one more question, Patrick.
Yes. Ben Weigel asks, what's the latest on innovation adoption behavior, both from the organization level and from the end user?
That's a great question, Ben. So just in terms of adoption behavior, I think many of the organizations have actually felt the disruption firsthand during COVID. And what we see is a lot of these companies putting in place some kind of model or module or plan to be able to be more adaptable in a way, or apply that flexibility to drive. I would say, maybe it's more reactive to that, but hopefully that leads to thinking forward, to think more innovatively moving forward. And I would say, in terms of what I've seen, again, just going back to my very first point about how I define innovation is there is actually a great tool called Value Proposition Canvas by Strategizer. They're the firm that also developed the business model canvas many of us are very familiar with. I would say if you have asked me how would a organization do that, I would say distinctiveness, driving value is core to innovation, regardless of what state you are. I think past, present, future. And a good exercise is really having a good understanding of your customers. And we are seeing more and more companies focus on the user, the customer, the people component. So I think that's a really, a positive step forward in that sense. We also see a lot of companies to drive innovation taking on insights, business insights very seriously. The data analytics, I think a lot of companies are starting to utilize, IBM Watson, all these capabilities that are not available. There's collaborative platforms where you can share data together. I think again, I think there's the data market's going to really drive, I think, the innovation moving forward as well. But one of the things I would just say, it is easy to get consumed and swim in the pool of data. And I would really encourage the firms that are really wanting to be innovative is to think about what you do with the data, is how you make the connections, how do you navigate the contradicting data, connect the dots to build the business insights, because the insights should help you drive, execute towards innovation, because it helps you come up with those action steps. So I would say that's one of the things that I would think about in terms of adoption. I know I just focused on the organizational component, but I think as a leader that applies as well, as providing an environment that allows that competency to build in their organization, in their business, and I would say personally, if you're interested in innovation, start to just think about how you may collect pestle data out there just personally. When you have free time, scroll. There's actually a lot of information out there. If you search and broaden that's the category you're looking for versus what you generally gravitate towards. So I would encourage that.
Wow. Thanks, Mary. That was so much good information. I think that's Patrick, that's the end of the questions we have time for, right? Yeah. Oh gosh, it's 9:45. Yes. Well, Mary, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. And we've shared a bunch of stuff in the chats about where you can find out more about Mary and Bridge. But just thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Patrick. He's gonna drive for the remaining few minutes we have here.
Hello, everyone. Mary, thank you so much. As you can tell, we partner with Mary and Jenny at Bridge Innovate on lots of different projects, and we have for the past few years now, and you can see why. We really love her insight and her inspiration. So please make sure you follow up, look at their websites. If you do know students from elementary through college, they have a lot of great opportunities for students to get engaged in innovation as well. So make sure you do check out BrightSpark. Just a really wonderful and inspirational program that Mary is driving and running over there. So we're going to be moving on to sort of venture forward updates, sector updates, a couple things that I just wanted you guys just to remember, just to have some reminders that we do have these venture forward circles. These are member to member or peer to peer learning circles where people can come together to really learn around a certain topic at hand. So sometimes these circles are around your role at your organization, like a CEO circle, a finance manager circle. We have a volunteer manager circle that's really popular as well. We also have a young nonprofit professional circle. So if you're sort of in the nonprofit world and you're just sort of launching into that career, be sure to join that circle, because it's just a great opportunity to touch base on how others like you are also trying to kind of get into that career and advance. Other thing is that we do have a Venture Forward Slack community. So if you wanted to, follow up on some of the conversation, and maybe you forgot some of the tools that Mary mentioned, and you want to ask, and you just want to see, hey, how is anybody else doing innovation inside your organization? That's a great community to ask those questions, to spark some conversation. So be sure to get engaged in our Slack community. If you don't know what that is, we can update you. Just contact us at Venture Forward. Mary mentioned the user experience project that she's about to launch with us, and that is all around ALICE households. And if you don't know what ALICE stands for, ALICE is an acronym, and it stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. So these are really related to households, but that kind of quote unquote fall below the livable wage for their particular family's situation and makeup. So really interesting. We're going to dive into the experiences of various types of ALICE households. And our first sort of household that we're diving into is the single female headed household with children. And it's going to be really interesting to basically really learn more about their experiences and on lots of different extremes. So it's a great project. We just put in the chat. If you want to follow along the project or get involved in a more meaningful way, there's an opportunity for you to sign up for our stakeholder and collaborator team as well. Don't forget, today is our local election day. Go vote. So important. The mayor of Chattanooga race is going on, so make sure if you fall in those districts, that you can vote for the mayor. Make sure you do that. And there's also lots of other things, city council and a couple other spots as well. So go vote, please, please, please. And then last, we just want to remind you about some learning opportunities that you have available at Venture Forward. So of course, we have our own workshops and trainings, but you also have access to the associations, our partners across the state. And we're all sort of collaborating on offering one another's members the online virtual training opportunities. So you can get the member rate at all of those organizations opportunities. So make sure that you follow up with us about that. We're also excited to say, hey, we're bringing Celebrate back. We can't wait to celebrate you and to motivate and then hopefully provide some inspiration for you to recognize the hard work you guys are doing. We actually have a date, so put it on your calendar, May 11th, 2021. We have a Celebrate event. So don't have the times necessarily nailed down quite yet. So go ahead and just at least put that on your calendar.
It's going to be at lunchtime, Patrick.
Oh, lunchtime. There you go. So now have a good lunch with us to hear a really motivational speaker and lots of other great, wonderful content that you're going to be sharing. So trust me, you don't want to miss this for sure. Hey, we only have a few more minutes. So I just want to hit on some of the high level membership aspects that we, again, want you to remember. This is one of them. We have a member dashboard. So if you're a member of Venture Forward, you can log into our website and access lots of wonderful resources for you, lots of member benefits that are at your access through our portal. So make sure to log into your dashboard where you can access the Grant Station database. You can learn a little bit more about our organization assessment process, which is kind of been revamped, and there's several organizations who are right now in the process of utilizing that great benefit. Also are the links to, again, the circles and to our Slack community, just lots. So make sure you do log in there. And then related to that, we do offer monthly membership 101 courses. So if you really want to figure out how to really take advantage of your membership to deepen your own professional development and your organization's impact in a more meaningful way, and you want to do that through your membership, and you don't know what that is, and well, we have a membership 101 course and workshop that we do every month. This next one is coming up next Thursday, and it's at 2 o'clock. And I'm going to put the calendar. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Ada is on top of it. So look in your chat here. You can, again, register for the 101 class right there. And then lastly, if you aren't a member oh my goodness, it's time to join because our membership at Venture Forward is so valuable, and it is we are such at a really good price range compared to lots of other nonprofit associations out there. This is the time to join our memberships. This is when we can do a lot to walk alongside you as an individual and as an organization to really deepen your guys' impact and your knowledge and your experience, and just again helping you to really advance your impact across wherever you are providing your impact. So if you want to learn more about membership, go to ventureforwardnow.org/join, and you can figure out a little bit more about what our membership is. With all of that, I believe that is all we have for today. So there is our contact information. Please be sure to reach out to us, follow our social feeds, and if you have any questions about, again, Bridge Innovate or about Mary's work, you want to get connected with Mary, then we'd be happy to pass along some information. And if there's something else in here that you have a question about, again, follow up with us at ventureforward@uwchat.org. Again, our next virtual town hall will be the first Tuesday of April. Make sure you join us. It's at 9 o'clock as always, and we'll see you online the next time. We're going to stick around and just in case you have a question, but hey, good to see you. Go out and make some